Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another of the C&P Technologies podcast series. Today, we're going to be talking about cyber insurance readiness and all things cyber insurance. I'm joined today by Reeves Zaytoun. Reeves is with Sentinel Risk Advisors. If you've been on some of our previous calls, Reeves has joined us as a panelist a time or two, and he has covered some of the points that we're going to discuss today. But today we're going to do in-depth all about cyber insurance. So we're really not going to talk much about technology at all like we have in previous calls. We're going to just drill all into the cyber insurance aspect. Reeves brings a very strong background in information technology to the cyber technology insurance lines for Sentinel Risk Advisors, who is a partner of C&P Technologies. Reeves provides in his role oversight, management, and implementation for Sentinel's cyber security insurance team. So Reeves, thanks for joining us. We're delighted to have you today.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
So just a quick kind of agenda of some of the topics we're going to be drilling down into. We're going to start by talking about the landscape in the market around cyber threats and some of the trends. And then we're going to get right into talking about some key policy features of cyber insurance. That segues a little bit into some of the cybersecurity preparedness and protection gaps, really from the perspective of the insurance carriers. We're not going to get into the technical details too much, but just more of what the insurance companies are recommending and looking for. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the real world claim scenarios. So what you could expect as an insured customer in the event that you would have a claim. And then we'll try to end up a little bit with a summary around some of the best practices that we're seeing in the industry and the insurance providers are recommending. I failed to introduce at the beginning Denise Hatton. Denise is our marketing manager here at C&P, and she's the behind-the-scenes producer. So you see her picture up in the podcast there, but she stays pretty silent unless there's some reason to interrupt us as we go. Denise, thanks for all you do to help get these podcasts out and providing this valuable content to C&P customers. So, Reeves, I said we'd like to start today with the cyber threat and market trends. So tell us a little bit about the state of the market from an insurance perspective and just how cyber insurers are adapting to meet the growing demand and risk.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. The current state of the cyber liability market is quite a bit more steady than it has been in previous years. Despite drastic increase in the number of claims, most notably ransomware type claims, premium rates have remained very stable, very consistent across 2024 and 2025. And this is because of a couple of factors. First, carriers have an ample capacity to take on more cyber risk. And that's primarily driven by the second factor, which is the cyber liability marketplace has become quite a bit more competitive. A number of cyber-focused carriers have joined the space and are challenging the household names in insurance.
How do you see cyber liability insurance keeping pace with the evolving threat landscape?
Yeah, so the cyber insurers, the cyber carriers are constantly evaluating the state of the marketplace, what type of claims activity is most common, whether it's ransomware, business email compromise, social engineering attacks, and they amend and adjust their policy language as the market changes, which is quite frequent. But they're constantly evaluating how their policies are designed to respond to various incidents and making adjustments based on those characteristics.
Obviously, from a technology perspective, we're seeing a continued growth in cyber attacks and ransomware. So I'm sure this is a continued growth in the insurance space as customers are looking to insure themselves against that liability. So it all makes sense to us, I believe, because what we're seeing in the marketplace. Let's shift gears a little bit now and just drill down into the details about what a typical cyber policy looks like.
Absolutely. Happy to walk you through that, Mark. Cyber liability policies can be quite confusing at first to the insured because there's a number of different insuring agreements and coverage lines within the policy. But for simplicity's sake, a cyber policy is broken up into two buckets. You have your first party insuring agreements and your third party insuring agreements. The first party insuring agreements are the coverage items, the coverage lines that are designed to react and respond directly to a breach of the insurance network. So this would include coverage for things like breach response activities, including forensic and legal review, recovery and restoration of data, as well as ransom payments or lost revenue from any business interruption. And then you have your third-party insurance agreements, which are designed to respond if and when a client, vendor, regulatory agency brings a claim against an insured for failure to protect their personally identifiable information or to comply with data or payment card regulations. Those sorts of incidents, those sorts of liability incidents are what those third-party insurance agreements are designed to respond to. So that kind of breaks the cyber policy down into in a more simplistic way to help insurer understand where and when certain items, certain coverage lines will respond.
So let me kind of ask a similar question, but just a different way for maybe customers that have not explored cyber liability insurance. Would every cyber policy have all of these elements, or is it more of a pick and choose features and coverage that a customer needs?
Generally speaking, every policy is going to have all of these elements. That being said, dependent on the way the insured or the prospective insured answers the cybersecurity control questions on an application, there may be coverages that are excluded because the carrier is not willing to assume the risk for an insured who doesn't have specific controls in place. For example, if an insured doesn't require secondary means of communication before authenticating a funds transfer request, then they're probably not going to offer that insured funds transfer fraud coverage.
Okay. It makes logical sense, but thanks for taking us through that. I know understanding the different elements is difficult for first time customers. And certainly the reason we have a guy like you on the podcast today to help people understand and learn better. And I'm sure you educate people every day in and day out on those types of questions. Thanks for spending time with us today. So let's shift gears a little bit. I said we weren't going to talk a lot in depth about technology today, but as we think about what the policy might cover, you segued over into what a customer might have or some gaps in their protection strategy or elements today. So let's talk a little bit about the preparedness and protection gaps. And my first question specifically would be, why are small businesses such frequent targets for cyber attacks? And then the kind of tee them up for you, the follow-up is going to be, what basics should every business have in place?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to go into that, Mark. There are a few sort of key reasons or key elements why a small business might be a specific target for a threat actor for a cyber attack. Most smaller businesses have much simpler IT infrastructure. They have smaller IT teams, fewer cybersecurity controls in place, usually due to cost constraints. So this combination makes them much more vulnerable to attack because threat actors know and exploit these vulnerabilities. And one of the sort of more staggering statistics that I've found in my work in this space is that following a cyber attack, 60% of businesses go out of business within 6 months of the incident. And so with that sort of eye-opening statistic, it begs the question, to your point, Mark, what types of cybersecurity basics should a small business have in place? And so a couple of the key things that we at Sentinel are going to recommend to our clients is that you provide cybersecurity training. About 95% of all cyber incidents are the result of human error. So getting out in front of that potential. Implementing multi-factor authentication, MFA, for email, backups, remote access. Travelers, one of the largest cyber carriers in the space, estimates that MFA would have prevented about 99% of all cyber attacks.
Wow.
And then lastly, having an incident response plan, because just because you have controls in place doesn't mean that an incident still can't happen. And so having a plan for when such an incident happens is really important to get back up and running as quickly as possible.
So certainly with what C&P does and the typical customer that we have, we can very much appreciate that many of the smaller customers that we support have those smaller IT teams. They have more constrained budgets. And so again, part of our reason for doing this type of education is to help them understand as much as they can about the things they need to do. It's great to hear, somebody who's not in the business of selling IT solutions advocate the same types of things that we're telling our customers. So anyway, great to go down that path and help customers with that. So if we think about the kind of the perspective of an insurance policy carrier, what are some of the most surprising statistics that you guys see about cyber preparedness?
Yeah, and so I'm going to go back to Travelers on this one. They do a lot of research in this space. They actually survey each year for their cyber index report. They survey a number of business decision makers across all verticals, businesses of all sizes, and about 80% of those decision makers acknowledge that cyber liability insurance is critical, but many of those businesses lacked the most basic controls. 20% were without tools like firewalls or antivirus data backups. 37% weren't implementing MFA. So they're acknowledging the importance of the coverage, but they're not necessarily protecting themselves on the front end, which is a little bit surprising.
We've already talked about the reasoning why those customers tend to lack the cybersecurity tools. Again, it's based on size and budgets or maybe lack of internal experience, but it's fascinating to hear that 80% are still acknowledge that they don't feel like they're where they should be in terms of protecting their organization. And the MFA statistic that you pointed out, I've been in this industry for quite a while and been dealing with cyber and risk protection and data protection. I had no idea that MFA could have solved that number of potential attacks for customers. So it's fascinating. So one of the things we
Absolutely.
also wanted to do today was everybody likes to hear real world scenarios and stories about things that really happened. Can you share without violating trust of a client? Can you share with us a real incident that illustrates how a cyber claim might have worked and what might have paid, what it might have covered for customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So this example here comes from a client of ours that submitted a claim over the last year and a half or so. Their organization, they had a $110,000 invoice that they were to pay to one of their third-party vendors, and an email informed them that their vendor's bank account information had changed. And they unknowingly responded to that email and wired the payment to those new ACH account details, only to find out later that $110,000 had gone to a fraudulent actor. And the bank, thankfully, was able to retrieve $20,000 of the funds, and then the insured had to pay the $10,000 deductible. But the cyber liability policy came in and covered the remaining $75,000, which for a small business could be a very significant savings that they were able to gain by having a cyber policy in place.
Yeah, that could have been a game changer for especially a small business. That could be the difference between making it or having to shut the doors, which we've seen in several cases, sadly, across the region that we cover. So tell us a little bit more about how the insurance might help mitigate both the financial and operational fallout.
Yeah. So in addition to providing financial coverages for losses like we just discussed, many cyber carriers are also offering a number of resources to bolster their insured cybersecurity preparedness. They're offering regular vulnerability scanning where they're doing non-intrusive scans of the insured's network and reporting out to them should they find or detect any particular vulnerabilities, open ports, leaked passwords, emails. They provide breach response coaches in the event that a breach occurs. Having somebody at the carrier to coach you through this step-by-step process, what you need to do is really important. And then they oftentimes have a panel of different legal counsel experts who, in the event of some sort of ransomware event or incident, help come in and help you negotiate with the threat actor and hopefully avoid paying the entirety of the ransom.
That operational stuff can also be invaluable. I know we tend to focus on the dollar side of the insurance, but the coaching and the assistance with that operational, just basically having somebody in your corner to help work yourself through that. That's oftentimes the role that a C&P is involved, more from a technical level, of course, but that's really invaluable to have somebody standing there next to you, helping you through the process. So I want to kind of circle back a little bit at the risk of being redundant. We talked about the gaps and the protection gap. So let's go back and drill down on what are the most critical firm level practices that you guys recommend to every business to adopt?
Yeah, and I'll go back to a few of the ones that I spoke about earlier. First and foremost, cybersecurity training. A vast majority of the cyber incidents that occur are the result of human error. So if you can get out in front of that, provide education to your employees, that's going to be, in addition to having the best tools in place, that's going to be your single best method of incident prevention. A few of these are pretty simple. Multi-factor authentication, specifically for email, backups, remote access. But there are a number of insureds that we have at Sentinel who aren't aware that for their basic email tool, they can go into the settings and toggle MFA on or off at no cost to them. And that's an important security measure. And then talked about incident response plans earlier, having a plan in place should a breach occur, because you can have all the best tools, all the best protocols in place, and an incident still may occur. And then the other critical one here is having backups of your data. When an incident occurs, being able to get up and running as quickly as possible can be the difference between staying in business or not. And so having backups stored offline is an extremely critical measure that we would recommend to our insureds.
I can't help but smile like the cat that swallowed the canary, because I'm personally been very involved in backup and data protection for many years. We've done previous podcasts specifically around that. So we're certainly big believers in that. But you've added to that passion for me today, how important MFA is. And to be honest, it's everywhere. And I use it all the time now with financial institutions and many places that just require you to do that MFA authentication. And it's certainly something that customers need to implement and just make it part of their standard practice. So thanks for going back through that. In addition to what they should do, I think it's oftentimes helpful to talk about what, not to do, that you guys might warn customers about. So do you have a list of the top don't do things for customers?
Yeah, I think the top one for us is, if it becomes apparent to you that your systems have been breached, you should immediately engage with Sentinel, your insurance agent and carrier, but do not correspond via email. If they're in your system corresponding via email, their threat actor is likely monitoring those communications. Pick up the phone, call your insurance agent. At Sentinel, we have a great team, in-house claims department, who will guide you through the process. We'll engage the carrier, begin the process of getting you back up and running and making you whole.
So that leads me right into the next question I was going to ask is what to do after a breach. And so it sounds calling your insurance carrier is top of the list, but take us through the kinds of things that Sentinel would help clients through after a cyber incident.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I alluded to just a moment ago, we do have an in-house claims team. In the event that an incident occurs, they'll guide you through step by step, every step of the process, following the incident, advocate for you directly on behalf with the carrier, and do everything that in our power to make sure that coverage applies and you're made whole. You pay as little for the incident as possible. And then going forward, we make sure that an incident, to the best of our ability, doesn't infect your insurability going forward, advocating for you with the carrier and making sure that the renewal outcomes are favorable.
So Reeves, you've done a fantastic job today of helping us educate customers about cyber insurance and liability coverage, important best practices, things to do and not to do. As we've stayed at 40,000 foot level without getting into all the details of the technology. Let's shift gears one last time as we wrap it up today. What makes Sentinel's approach to cyber liability unique? So here's an opportunity for you to play the Sentinel commercial message, but what makes you guys special and how do you approach the market maybe differently than others?
Yeah, absolutely. A few things that differentiate Sentinel from the other insurance agents in the market is one, we have a dedicated specialty lines team. So we focus on the non-standard lines of insurance coverage, one of those being cyber liability. And having that expertise has allowed us to establish great carrier relationships in an effort to ensure that our clients have access to the most comprehensively written policies at affordable rates. And then additionally, we have an in-house claims team. Like I mentioned earlier, they're going to guide our clients through every step of the process in the event that a breach does occur. And to your point about partnerships with carriers, our partnerships allows us to, as mentioned a moment ago, negotiate on behalf of our clients to get the most comprehensive coverage possible at the best possible pricing when it comes to placing our insured cyber liability policies.
Reeves, we're at the bottom half of the hour here, so appreciate all the valuable information that you've shared with us and customers today about cyber insurance and specifically around Sentinel and your approach. I think this was spot on to what many of our customers have asked about. In a closing commercial statement here, what I'll tell you guys out there, if you're listening to this, if you have questions about technology, C&P certainly stands ready. You can reach out to us, reach out to your account team. We'd be delighted to help you with some base level assessments of your environment and make recommendations. And we can't recommend highly enough Reeves and his organization, Sentinel, if you are looking at cyber insurance, if you're looking to get maybe some different options for cyber insurance. Sentinel Risk Advisors has been a great partner for C&P, and we would certainly recommend that you reach out to them. With that, Reeves, thanks again for joining us today. Denise, thanks for all your work behind the scenes, and we appreciate you guys listening, and we'll look forward to another podcast coming up next month.
Thank you for having me, Mark.